I've always been into motorcycles. We growing up, I unfortunately didn't get too involved into it till probably I got out of high school. One of my earlier jobs, I worked for a machine tool company, and that's what kind of gave me my first interest in doing machine type work. I finally decided to do what the rest of the family had done, was get in the oil field. Even with my dad, you know, my dad's always had that mindset, is if something's broke, well, let's figure out how to fix it. You know, it ain't something's broke, oh, well, somebody go get me a phone, we need to call somebody. Clinton Wallace, we're here in Cleveland, Texas. I've always been into motorcycles. We growing up, I unfortunately didn't get too involved into it till probably I got out of high school. Growing up, I can remember when I was a kid, you know, we had four-wheelers and stuff like that, and I remember a buddy of mine got a dirt bike, and I was so hopped up on a dirt bike, and it was like, no, two wheels is not even an option. Then we had a buddy of ours that showed up at the house, had him a bike. I wanted to go take it for a ride. No, that's not an option. So I thought my dad all this time just was against bikes altogether. And then as soon as I moved out the house, Dad gets him a bike. And I'm like, what is going on here? What am I missing here? And that's when I found out the whole story that, you know, I mean, my grandfather had a 57 Panhead. And apparently the story I told was all the boys was taking turns kind of riding. Well, my dad's oldest brother ended up wrecking the bike. And luckily he walked away from it without too bad injuries, and at that point, bike was sold so that the other four boys wasn't going to kill themselves on it and stuff like that. So that was my dad's theory, is he had bikes and all that, but when he had the kids, there was all that was put aside because he didn't want to be responsible if something were to happen to us. If we decided to go the direction of bikes on our own, great. If not, whatever. But he wasn't going to push that subject. But as soon as we got out the house, bikes came back in the picture pretty hardcore. Had a few stock bikes to begin with, and like most people, you know, want to kind of make it my own and customize them some, you know, stuff like that. So I did like most people, just buy whatever I could bolt on at the time and stuff, and it just kind of grew from there, you know. I mean, I just kept wanting to do more and more with it and stuff like that. And of course, at the time, didn't have a shop or anything at all to do anything with and stuff. So most of what I done started out just under a carport. So I grew up in a little town, Iota, Louisiana. Growing up, I was mainly into sports, played lots of sports, pretty much football, baseball, basketball, pretty much whatever they had. We raised cattle, had lots of horses and stuff with that and what have you. Believe it or not, I was never really mechanically inclined early on. You know, I focused mainly on sports and stuff of that nature and stuff. When I started working out offshore 7 and 7. And, you know, when you're on a platform for 7 days, there's not a whole lot to do. So there was always constantly compressors need worked on, pumps need being worked on and stuff like that, you know, and that was not part of my job requirement and stuff, but I was not going to sit there and just watch a mechanic do his job while I have absolutely nothing to do. So I got in with the mechanics and would help them and stuff like that. And that's when I really started learning a lot about mechanics and building motors and pumps and things of that nature. I worked in production. So for people that don't know, you know, I mean, there's drilling side of things and then there's the production side of things. Drilling is when they go in there, drill the well and complete the well and stuff. Then what happens is then it gets turned into production, which is where we come in and we produce the well. You know, we take the oil, gas, and water as it comes out the ground. We separate it. The 7 to 7 part of it meant that you would fly out to the platform and you would live on the platform out in the Gulf for 7 days. And then you'd come home and you was home for 7 days. So you pretty much just worked every other week. Back whenever I was out there, if you really wanted to make money in the oil field, that's where the big money was. There were just a lot more opportunities. So you could go out there like I did, with literally no experience, start off completely green and work your way up, and you can make good money. Well, I ran some loops, so I'd fly out on the first day, but then every day I was flying from platform to platform, doing my job. So it's a lot more flight time, that there's obviously a lot more risk in, so I'd done a little welding, like most kids do in high school, in ag class and stuff like that, but not a ton of it. I decided to get a welding machine, pretty much finished teaching myself how to arc weld so I could build all the structures that are out here. My barn's out of pipe, all the fencing's out of pipe. This shop I built. I bought an old 61 Chevy, built the motor for it, then I decided I wanted to airbag it. Well, I've always been a firm believer that I don't, if there's something I can do or something I know I'm capable of doing, even if I'm not sure how to go about doing it, I'd just soon figure it out myself than to pay somebody to do it. So in that, I knew I wanted to do some modifications to the suspension on the truck and all that, and I hadn't done a lot of MIG welding at that time. But what better way to figure it out than just go buy a MIG machine and run some beads and figure it out. So I taught myself how to MIG weld. Once I got proficient with it, then I did a complete suspension on the chassis, built the whole chassis on the truck. And I got to thinking, well, there's, if I could do that, why can't I do it on a bike, basically, and stuff. So that's whenever I decided to dive more into doing a full-on build of the bike. The first time I got a TIG machine, and I had done so much between arc welding and MIG welding, and then the first time I welded with a TIG, I'm like, really? You can actually weld and not get blistered up from head to toe? I'm like, this is freaking amazing. This is the greatest thing ever made. So did a lot of test pieces, a lot of other pieces before I attempted it on a bike, to make sure it was going to stay together. At the beginning, I did the welding, but I was always buying my fittings and stuff from somebody, like to build sissy bars and stuff like that. I'd go online, buy little bungs or something like that, and then realize that, why don't I just start machining my own? So same thing, I decided to buy my first lathe and taught myself how to run it and started machining my own fittings from there. And that's kind of how the bikes came to be at that point. You get the equipment, and I mean, you almost immediately have to understand the complete function of it, because eventually something's going to break on it. And I'm not a wealthy individual that just every time somebody breaks, I pick up the phone, call someone and say, hey, come over here and come fix my equipment for me. I got to figure out what's wrong with it and fix it myself most of the time. My grandfather that I'm named after, he was a compressor mechanic. And from most people I know that come from that generation, they just didn't take things and fix it. You fixed your own stuff. People just didn't have a lot of extra money at the time. First ever motorcycle was a Honda Shadow 650. Yeah, we went looking for a bike, and any kind of Harley, period, was out of my budget. So it just wasn't in the cards. So I started looking for the next best thing and stuff. At the time, I hadn't spent a lot of time on bikes, so I wasn't sure, and I was like, man, just seems a little small. And of course, my dad convinced me. He's like, oh no, back in the day, that was a big bike for us, man, that'll be plenty. So I went ahead on the word of my dad, that 650 is plenty, as I got it. And what I can say is, as soon as I drove out of the parking lot and got on the road, I realized real quick it wasn't going to be enough bike. I was so upset. I was like, what the hell have I gotten into? But it's what I could afford at the time, and me and my wife, Bobby, we spent a lot of time and made a lot of miles on that little bike, So the first bike I did anything to was the second bike. I had that bike for a few years, and I got to where I was working so much, taking call-outs at night, I didn't have hardly any time to ride. And I'm not one to have bikes just sitting around if you can't ride them. So I sold the bike. A couple of years later is when I first got my next bike, and what that one wound up being was a Road King. It was a bike my brother had bought. I think it may have had 1,000 miles put on it. It was damn near a brand new bike, but he made me a deal I couldn't refuse. So for me, I bought it as an investment. So I was like, I'm gonna get it and flip it and make some money on the deal. And that's when I decided I wanted to do some customizing for the first time, and I was like, I'm gonna do something different on this one. And I literally come home, again, didn't have no shops, all I had was a carport, and I think Bobby was at work one day. When she come home, I pretty much had the bike completely stripped down under the carport. And I think at that point in time, nobody thought that the bike was ever going to go back together because it was in a lot of pieces. But needless to say, it got back together. I rode it around for a while, and I ended up selling it and make some money on the deal. So, and then after that one, I kind of went full bore on customs after that. So it's always been a running joke that, you know, we must be kin to William Wallace somewhere in there and stuff. And of course, it didn't take long after the movie Braveheart come out. I think my mom decided she was going to do some research of her own and stuff. And I don't know the exact path, but apparently she has traced it back, and apparently there is a direct tie to our family back to that. I don't even know how it goes, but apparently it does. And I think with most of our family's attitude, I think it's a given. See, and that's how he was. He was happy until somebody pissed him off. I mean, we just like to be happy people. Don't make us mad. We committed that we was going to buy the place from my parents. We had to clear the property because it was, you know, it had trees everywhere. You know, it was growed up. You know, there was literally just a spot cleared for the house. And, you know, with my wife, like I said, she's always had horses and stuff, you know, showing them whether it was barrel racing or now, you know, cutting horses. We knew we needed everything cleared, you know, for pasture and stuff. So when I got to thinking about how I was going to do it or whatever, me being in the oil field, I knew, you know, pipe makes the best fence as far as I'm concerned because they're there forever. You know, you don't have to worry about wood rotting or nothing like that. So I went to the owner of the company at the time and then told him that, you know, hey, look, I'm fixing to start building a barn and some pens and stuff. Can I buy some pipe from you? Because, you know, in the oil field, you know, they're always either plugging and abandoning wells, you know, and when you do that, you pull the tubing out of the well and stuff, and it's pretty much all it's good for is structural at that time. It's not good to reuse. Man, if you're using it to improve your place and you're not trying to resell it and make money, he said, you just take whatever you want and use it like you need. And that was a godsend because, I mean, you know, I could have never afforded to put the pipe that I've got out in this place if I had to buy it all. Yeah, what most people don't realize, what most people see is what they see now. They see that, I'm got bikes and stuff. I build bikes and what have you. And of course, she's showing horses. So the first question we always ask is, how did you two ever meet? Because it just seems like polar opposite. Somehow we both wound up in the hill country. You know, me being from Louisiana, her being raised pretty much in Oregon and stuff like that. And somehow our families moved to the hill country within, 20 miles of each other. At that time, I was still rodeoing. I rode rough stock, I rode bulls, and I rode bareback horses. The bareback is what ended my rodeo career. Riding bulls all the year, everybody thought I was crazy for riding bulls, but I never had any serious injuries riding bulls. The way it works, I mean, we 100% support each other in what we do. There's always the instances where, if I've got a fresh build that I've done and I'm trying to get it out and get seen, I may have a show that I need to go to. Well, that may just so happens to be the same weekend that she has a show that she needs to be at, and there's not a big discussion of who's fixing to give up what, and stuff. It's not that. It's okay. Well, you go out. Good luck at your show this weekend, and I'm gonna go do my thing, and then we're gonna be back, and But when that doesn't happen, we support each other. The horses that she's working with now are way too expensive for me to be getting on and screwing up. So I'll leave that to her. We don't have a big place, but anybody that knows anything about it, if you have animals and stuff, horses, cows, or anything like that, it's a full-time job. Just keeping up with everything. Tractors, I mean, they always needing work on or something. I mean, there's always something that needs attention, outside of what we normally do. So, man, I tell you, we are so blessed with dogs. So I brought a couple home, but the rest, most of these animals are just literally strays that have either wandered up or, like the two I found, rescues. They were puppies that were on the side of the road that I picked up and brought home. The good thing about dogs like that is that they're very loyal. From early on, looking through magazines and stuff like that, I've always leaned towards, I really like the styling of the longer bikes. They just look really cool and stuff like that. And that's where it started was, okay, I want to build one of those because they look cool, and stuff. And then I rode the first one, which was Hippie Chick, and the ride is phenomenal. And that's the misconception that so many people have. They just see them and the first thing they think is, oh, they don't handle worth a crap. And, it's so not true. I mean, It's like anything else. If you don't know how to build a bike and you don't know geometry, it's probably going to handle like crap. But if you get the geometry right on, they handle great. The gold bike that I had built out this one, that was the longest one so far. Just kind of like I said, pushing my skill set at that time. I needed to build that bike for the Michael Lichter exhibit at the time. I only had 7 months to build that. And, you know, for some people, that's a ton of time. But for somebody like me that, you know, I work a day job. Most days I don't get home. If I'm lucky, 6 o'clock. Most days it could be even later than that, so I don't have a lot of time in the afternoon with everything else we have going on. It's not just building a bike, it's machining parts. It's, you know, I mean, polishing parts and stuff. I do all myself to save the money. And at the time, I could only find a 40 over front end for that bike. Most people that see that bike, the first thing they're gonna say is, yep, it's a neat bike to look at, but you ain't riding that bike nowhere. All of my bikes I ride. If they don't ride, I won't bring them anywhere. So that was kind of the main focus. I wanted to prove to myself that I could build a bike like that and get the geometry right, because on a bike like that, it's critical to get the geometry right on that, or else you got problems. I've always been fond of Jeff Cochran's style and stuff on his little swing arm bikes and stuff. Anybody that knows anything about bikes, it's one thing to build a rigid bike, but building a swing arm bike is a little bit different animal. On a rigid chopper, you know, you have certain lines, you know, and stuff, and man, everything flows nice. To wrap my head around that, you know, there's so many moving parts. The lines are a little different, you know, and that was a big struggle for me. You know, I have, you know, whereas things tend to want to break up and not flow, but the task is to try to make it flow as good as it can. So that bike was a struggle to get it done. What I have moved into now, I work for an oil and gas company still, Streamline Production Services. What we do is build production facilities. Our company can go in there and do everything. We can go in there and build the dirt pad before the rig gets there. We build all the production equipment in-house. What my job consists of is usually I sit down with the owner of the company. We start off with designing it. We usually have a 3D CAD program to where we can see the facility in 3D. And then when it's ready to go out in the field, that's where I kind of take over at that point. I go out in the field and assemble the entire facility on location. And that's another thing for me, you know, that I enjoy about the bike stuff, because you know, it's relaxing. I don't have the stress, you know. Something I'm gonna do repetition on, where I can just kind of clear my head and just get into a groove, and you know, that relaxes me. If I've had a real bad day and I just don't want to mess with it, I don't have to come in here at all. There's too many people I know that do it, and you know, anybody that knows when you do it for a living, it becomes a job. You know, if you're trying to do something and you need some guidance, there's a lot of guys out there that you could call and they will guide you and lead you down and help you out. You know, I mean, I wish there was more of them, because then everybody could have cool bikes and stuff. Go out there, build something. Like I said, don't expect it to be, you know, a showpiece at first. You know, it doesn't have to be. That's how you get good at it. Repetition. You know, do it again. You know, and the more you do things, just like that. The first few parts I made on the lathe, they weren't pretty by all means, and I had to do a lot of hand sanding to make them look right and stuff like that. But now I understand what I did wrong. You know, there's little things of, you know, maybe I didn't have the tooling set up just right, or maybe the speed was going a little too fast or too slow, you know, and stuff like that. You just got to figure it out. For a lot of years, I didn't have half of anything in here. You know, everything was just hand tools, basically, you know, and stuff like that, you know. And but I'm a firm believer. I'm always trying to learn more, you know, whether it's, you know, watching videos or reading books or something, you know, and stuff like that. With the anticipation of, you know, like that. I've watched so many videos and read up on mills and lathes, you know, with the anticipation maybe one day I'd have one, you know, and stuff like that, you know. So when I did get it, I wasn't just a complete moron when I looked at it, you know, and stuff like that. So, but it's still a different game when you get one. You gotta figure it out. Believe it or not, Hippie Chick here, like I said, Hippie Chick was literally built under a carport, between the carport and inside my house. And I don't even know how I did that. I mean, I spent so many days, I'd put tarps up to try to block the wind, because TIG welding was an issue out there. But when I first got full walls, I say that, I was excited, because when I first started this shop, I had built the slab first, and then I framed it and put a roof on it. And I thought I was in heaven. I mean, I just got a roof and a nice level slab. I was good with that. But when I got 4 walls up, that was a game changer there, man. I had followed Jeff, you know, from early on, you know, Sucker Punch Sallies and stuff like that. So I've known his work forever. Seen him at many shows, but I've never been the type of person, you know, I don't, I guess you say, get starstruck. I'm not one of these that sees somebody that, you know, is famous or whatever and just go, oh, I got to go talk to them and all that. I don't do that, because I've always believed that them guys need their privacy too. You know, I mean, you know, I know they got a business to run or whatever, but you know, I'm not going out there to do that. So it took quite a few years before me and Jeff met, kind of just through other people and stuff. And but man, that guy is such a great guy. He's down to earth. He's, like I said, he's one of those guys that, like I said, anytime you got a problem, a question, or whatever, man, that guy is willing to help. He don't get the recognition that he should for a lot of other people's stuff sometimes, you know, but you know, it happens in this industry. When I told him that I was going to do this bike, he was probably more excited about it than anybody, you know, and stuff like that. So like I said, any questions I had, he helped a lot along the way for sure. I've been to a lot of Lichter shows and stuff, and obviously know who Lichter is. So the fact that whenever I got that invitation, you know, to me that meant something. Even to this day, you know, I'm totally humbled by all that, because I mean, you know, like I said, I've always just viewed myself as, you know, like I said, I'm just somebody that I build bikes just because I enjoy doing it. You know, I'm not really building it to go impress anybody or do nothing like that. I just enjoy doing it, you know. And like even this year till now, I mean, you know, the bike I just built, the little swing arm bike, it's gotten way more response than I really anticipated. It's hard for me to sit back and really look at it and like, oh, this is a good detail or that's a good detail. I just look at it as like, well, see, to me, like I look at that bike and I really don't think I done that much fabrication to it. But then when I sit and like go through bit by bit, then I realize, okay, there's actually more fabrication in there than I remember. So she shows cutting horses. So with cutting horses, the whole premise behind it is you go into a herd of cows. Your job is to pick a cow out. And once you pick the cow out, you pretty much set your hands down and the horse takes over at that point. And the horse's job is to hold the cow away from the herd. And with like most anything else, you're judged. There's a judge there that's scoring you. He can deduct or add points to your score depending on about 5 million different things. I mean, there's a bunch of things. You know, she spent many years barrel racing, did very well at that, and then I think just kind of got bored with it, wanted to do something new and different, and decided to go the route of cutting horses, and she's done very well. She's been competing now for going on almost 4 years, and she's won a world title and a couple of reserves. This year she won a reserve title in the 50,000 non-pro class, so super proud of her. You know, when I first started going around there, you know, I mean, you know, obviously I was kind of the oddball of the bunch, you know, and but you know, once guys kind of slowly started coming in and introducing, they found out what I did with the bikes. You'd be surprised how many guys, you know, had the similar interests and stuff and was really excited to sit down and talk bikes, you know. You know, the first time you do something, it's never going to be perfect, you know, but man, to sit back and say, you know what, it ain't perfect, but I built it. I've been asked several times why I've never tried to open a shop. I can come out here like that if I've had a rough day at work. A lot of times I'll come out here and that's what I'll do. I'll start machining parts on the mill or the lathe or something. Wallace, Cleveland, Texas, and I'm a Dennis Kirk garage builder.